It's panic. You have no idea what's going on or where she is, and you can't do anything about it.
2 vulnerable teenage girls are kidnapped in broad daylight.
The immediate conclusion was that we were talking about a homicide, probably 2 homicides actually.
Ward Weaver III, a trusted local dad, is accused of the ultimate betrayal.
The girls, Miranda and Ashley, looked at him as like a father figure.
He is suspected of murdering them both, but proving his guilt is next to impossible.
There was no crime scene. There was no scattering of books. There was no blood. There was no physical evidence of any sort.
This is the story of Ashley Pond and Miranda Gaddis, the Oregon City girls, and the long struggle to bring their killer to justice. Oregon City, 2002. The site of 2 large paper mills about 20 miles south of Portland, Oregon. This community has suffered the same fate as many industrial towns across America.
It is kind of run down. It's never really caught on as a fashionable place to live. It's very blue collar, very working class.
Ashley Pond's mother, Lori, and Miranda Gaddis' mother, Michelle, are both raising large families here as single mothers.
The Pond and Gaddis families both lived in an apartment complex kind of on the edge of town, full of a lot of single mothers and children. Both families had been involved with dangerous men who had been convicted of violent crimes recently.
12-year-old Ashley and 13-year-old Miranda are part of a large social scene at the apartments, along with Miranda's 9-year-old sister, Mariah.
We had a single mother raising us who was there when it was convenient for her. So it was rough. It was difficult because other kids had both parents and we didn't.
On the morning of January the 9th, Ashley Pond leaves home to catch the school bus. She walks up the long drive connecting the apartments to the main road. But by the time the bus arrives, Ashley has vanished.
At the very beginning, we did think maybe she just ran away. There was a lot of things going on in her life. But after a week or so, and there was still nothing and no word from her, nobody had seen her, you know, we knew that something else was going on.
The Oregon City Police put out a press release and talked about it. After a short time, they decided that it was possible kidnapping or something like that, and the FBI actually got involved.
About 7:30 in the morning, she left her apartment, the Newell Creek Apartments, and quite frankly disappeared. There was no crime scene, no indication of an abduction. By the time she left her apartment, she was not seen again.
Then on March the 8th, Ashley's friend Miranda Gaddis also disappears.
60 days to the day. Miranda Gaddis, who lived in the same apartment complex as Ashley, disappeared under remarkably same conditions. She got up, left for school at 7:30 in the morning, and was never seen again.
Miranda's mother, Michelle, searches all over town, but can't find any trace of her daughter.
At the police station, when we walked in, Michelle was visibly crying. And she went up to the desk and she said, "My 13-year-old daughter is missing and we can't find her." And literally the entire police station, stopped. It was almost simultaneously, everybody looked up at this poster that the police station had made up for Ashley, the missing girl. In that moment, the things that run through your mind about where Miranda could be, what's being done to her, and who she could possibly be with, it's one of the worst feelings in the world because it's panic. You have no idea what's going on or where she is, and you can't do anything about it.
Now with 2 girls missing, the FBI and local police start a task force. They set up a command center at the fire station. County Prosecutor Christine Landers is with the team from day one.
After Miranda disappeared, the immediate conclusion was that we were talking about a homicide, probably 2 homicides actually, that they had obviously been taken by the same person because the 2 girls were connected. They knew one another.
With no forensic evidence and no eyewitnesses, the task force faces a huge range of possible suspects.
One of the programs was to identify all sex offenders in the area. There were over 900 registered sex offenders in a couple-hour drive from the apartment complex. Other teams had to identify everyone who lived in the apartment complex, but not only those who lived there, but those who were visiting. We identified all the delivery people, anyone who had any reason to come onto the property. And of course, we looked at people that the victims knew. And one of them that they both knew in common was Ward Weaver.
39-year-old Ward Weaver III has a house that sits at the top of the drive leading down to the girls' apartments. He lives here with his 20-year-old son Francis and his 12-year-old daughter Mallory. Both Ashley and Miranda are friends with Mallory and frequent visitors to his home.
The girls, Miranda and Ashley, looked at him as like a father figure because he used to give like parenting tips or would say stuff that a parent would. He was like the neighborhood dad. Everybody wanted to be up there to hang out with him because he was really cool.
In early June, a source close to the Pond family gives a tip to reporter Jim Redden. The source believes that Ashley and Miranda may have been kidnapped by the so-called neighborhood dad, Ward Weaver.
He came to the door, kind of startled, which isn't unusual, but invited me in. He really did seem like just a fairly normal kind of guy. You could very easily imagine him in the backyard with a barbecue and a beer in his hand, and just, the kind of person you could spend an afternoon with. We sat down in his living room and talked for a while. He seemed to grow more and more nervous as we were talking, and finally he said, "Can I tell you something? I'm the FBI's prime suspect in the investigation."
Weaver also insists he is totally innocent. Redden prints both of these sensational claims in the local paper. Then he starts to investigate Weaver's background. But he doesn't realize that the task force is also digging into Weaver's past, where they uncover some disturbing revelations.
It came out during the course of background on him that his father was serving a life sentence for a murder, rape.
Ward had a violent past. He had been convicted of assault down in California. He just freaked out and beat up a woman that he was with.
Most alarming of all, investigators find that Weaver has a possible motive for murder.
Ashley had accused Ward Weaver of sexually abusing her, and at that point the relationship broke down and they became very hostile to one another.
All this type of information obviously kept bringing him to the surface, and his constant contact with the various girls in the community through his daughter also did. But all that taken together didn't provide enough evidence to satisfy a search warrant.
By July 2002, thanks to Jim Redden's reporting, investigators aren't the only people interested in Weaver. The media can't get enough of him.
No, actually, I've got Channel 2 here.
What raises a red flag for relatives is Ward Weaver's family history.
Enamored with the attention, Weaver gives interviews to anyone who asks.
Depending on how many girls were here, like I said, I've had some huge parties.
But as news of Weaver's past leaks out, many people in the town begin to believe he is a killer. They too appear on TV, and accusations are traded across the airwaves.
He was singling Ashley out, lavishing her with attention and gifts.
I honestly don't think Ashley was kidnapped.
I want to see them go through every little inch of the house.
And there's a side of this story that's not being told.
He hit me over the head several times with a cast iron frying pan in my sleep.
Yeah, it's been a nightmare.
When he went on TV, that really kind of amped things up. It raised the interest.
Weaver's house attracts a special scrutiny, as rumors circulate that he has secreted the girls' bodies somewhere on the property. Investigators are equally focused on the house, but they still cannot find probable cause to get a search warrant.
At one point during an interview, he took one of the reporters around his property and into his kitchen, where he leaned against a freezer, which we suspect that Miranda's body was in.
The most intense speculation centers on a concrete pad behind Weaver's house. He claims it's the foundation for a hot tub, but many think it's a burial site.
The story had really taken on a genuine life of its own, that he had, emerged as a very suspicious character once everything in his background had come out. People had left signs at his house and on the concrete pad, one that said, "Dig me up."
The relentless attention puts an enormous strain on the Weaver household. By late summer, Weaver decides he no longer wants to be part of the story.
He had been preparing to leave town. He had quit his job, and he had told friends and relatives that he was going to move out because he didn't want to be in the spotlight anymore.
On the evening of August the 13th, Weaver's car is loaded and ready to go. His son Francis and Francis's girlfriend Randy had spent the day helping him pack.
And then literally, as he was moving out of his house, he just cracked. He attacked the girl in his home, tried to strangle her, and tried to rape her.
Somehow, Randy manages to escape and runs for her life.
She fled the house, actually wrapped in a shower curtain to escape from it.
She flags down a passing motorist on the main road. As Weaver tries to make a run for it, the police quickly surround his car. Amazingly, his arrest is caught on camera by a news helicopter.
He was already halfway down the street, actually. He was in the process of leaving in his vehicle, so they got there just in time.
Weaver's own actions have, at last, given the task force probable cause to search his house. On August 23, 2002, they obtain a warrant to look for Ashley and Miranda's bodies.
That morning of the search, we all met at the task force office, and pretty well knew that the case was going to be culminating that day, or at least the beginning of the end. And we talked to all the officers and agents, and I told them, that this morning you're going to be entering into a graveyard of little girls.
The search was all day that first day. The first set of remains that were located were Miranda's. She was discovered in the shed. She was in a cardboard box, and it was a microwave box. It was remarkably small. So she was in the fetal position, I suppose you would say, but and her arms were sort of placed around her legs.
At that point, it was a full-blown media circus. We reporters and just other interested people could watch the scene from a rise across the street, just kind of a little hillside. After the first body was found, the crowd, sort of gasped as though they were very surprised.
At about 4:15 this afternoon, the Oregon State Medical Examiner has positively identified the remains discovered yesterday as the body of Miranda Gaddis.
For 2 days, the task force painstakingly searches every inch of the property.
Ashley was underneath the concrete pad.
It's not just a matter of taking a big jackhammer and boring right down. Every grain of dirt has to be sifted. Everything has to be looked at as you get further and further down in case there's evidence.
Ultimately, when they got all of the pad off and started to dig down, they found 3 55-gallon drum kind of barrels, and Ashley was in one of those barrels.
Ashley had been missing for almost 8 months, Miranda for 5.
I know I was crying a lot, and I kept saying it wasn't true, because obviously it was true, but I couldn't accept it.
All the 5 months that we spent hoping it was like fake almost. Like I was standing outside of this watching this happen, but it wasn't Miranda and it wasn't us and it didn't happen. And I didn't cry, I didn't say anything. I just said, okay.
Weaver is indicted on 17 separate charges, including the attempted rape of his son's girlfriend and sexually abusing Ashley when she was still alive. Numerous counts relate to the aggravated murder of Ashley and Miranda.
We were certainly going to be urging the jury to impose the death penalty.
The evidence seems damning, but in fact, it's far from an open and shut case.
It was a very, strange situation. Here you have two bodies that are found on his property, one under a concrete pad that he poured and one in a shed. But aside from that, there really wasn't any evidence tying him to the murders. Now that may sound strange, but it has never really been clear exactly when he murdered the girls or exactly how he murdered the girls or what he did with the bodies before they were found.
October the 4th, 2002, Ward Weaver appears in court by video link from the county jail. He pleads not guilty to all charges.
Wanted to destroy him. He watched us for 5 months and he heard our cries and our pleas on national television, national news stations, our local news stations. He listened and watched us go through that, knowing the entire time exactly where they were and what had happened.
Weaver, in custody awaiting trial, continues to protest his innocence and develops his own theories about what really happened. As always, he finds one group of people ready and willing to listen.
He is entitled to visitors, and the media figured out that he would talk to them, and so they would just set up a visit with them. They would show up, they'd just go to the jail with a camera and they'd sit down and talk to him.
I was publicly tried and convicted before I was indicted. Done lots of drugs.
Ward said that he had been fighting a drug gang in Oregon City and had been trying to stop them from selling drugs to children, and that they had retaliated against him by murdering these girls and hiding their bodies on the property.
But the more he talks, the more guilty he appears.
They're making a big deal because I had handcuffs and wrist and ankle straps in my nightstand.
He mentioned something about the investigators needing to pay him back for the freezer that they had seized because he wasn't going to want it anymore.
Everybody's made a big deal about my freezer, that I put her in the freezer and she was in my freezer until she went into the ground.
He just basically wanted to talk, and people were going to listen to him because he was charged with aggravated murder.
Fearful he will condemn himself to death with his outspoken opinions, Weaver's lawyers ask him to stop talking to the press. He refuses to listen.
That prompted his first team of lawyers to quit.
On March the 27th, 2003, they file a motion claiming that since Weaver will not follow their advice, they cannot properly represent him. It has now been more than a year since the murders, and when new attorneys are appointed, they tell the court it will take another year to prepare for trial.
There's all kinds of things that happen that delay a death penalty case from going to trial. So this was the first, but we didn't think it would likely be the last, and it wasn't, as it turned out, the last sort of shenanigan that Ward Weaver pulled.
At the beginning of 2004, Weaver's behavior changes radically, and it is not a change for the better.
His physical appearance just dramatically deteriorated. He went from being a fairly normal-looking person to someone who was, very stressed out, very run down, and then finally very psychotic appearing.
He was sort of acting as though he heard voices. He was stuffing toilet paper into his ears. He actually stuffed toilet paper so far down into his ears that he had to go to medical to have it removed. As a result of that, his lawyers made a motion that he go down to the state hospital for an evaluation to determine if he was mentally capable of assisting in his defense. And that took several months.
The judge declares Weaver unfit to assist in his own defense and suspends proceedings indefinitely. 2 years after Ashley and Miranda's disappearance, their families are still waiting for justice.
I did not expect the games he was playing. I guess when you see it in the movies, you know they're caught, we have the evidence, it's cut and dry, that's the end.
People who commit crimes like Ward Weaver like to be in control. And when you get swept up in the criminal process, the defendant doesn't have any control. So this is one way that he can try to grab some of that back for himself. And he did.
4 months later, on August the 25th, 2004, Weaver appears in court again. Now heavily medicated, the judge declares him fit to stand trial. But before proceedings can finally begin, Weaver has one more surprise up his sleeve.
We were set for trial in January of 2005, and it was late September of 2004, and he had his lawyers approach Mr. Horner and I about entering a plea of guilty and not going to trial, not being obviously subject to the death penalty, but pleading to aggravated murder and then getting a true life sentence, so life without possibility of parole.
His daughter, Mallory, had written to him in jail, and she kind of pled with him to not go through the trial because she would have been called as a witness.
If there was any person in the world that Ward Weaver loved, it was Mallory Weaver. He did not want her to have to testify against him. And so I think he just kind of threw in the towel.
Prosecutors draft an agreement which will send Weaver to jail for the rest of his life. But before offering it to him, they asked the Pond and Gaddis families for approval.
We agreed, honestly, that what we wanted to happen to him is not legal. They don't have that kind of punishment.
Despite wanting Weaver to die, the families feel unable to face the ordeal of a long trial. They agree to the deal, and on September the 22nd, 2004, Ward Weaver pleads guilty to aggravated murder.
In court, it was very difficult. We wanted to go after him. We wanted to hurt him. There's so many mixed feelings. There's staring at him, wondering who is this monster? Not understanding this person that we've known for so long. You know, we knew his kids, we've talked to him. It was very difficult sitting in the courtroom when he was in the same room.
He is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
When you look at the magnitude of what you've done here, I really just see nothing but evil.
But Weaver's plea bargain leaves many questions unanswered.
There's just, at this point, there's still no information on actually how the girls were killed and exactly why. The bodies were in such a state of decomposition that the soft tissue didn't reveal anything. So the purpose, the reasoning, it's not there.
5 years later, in 2009, one woman tries to learn the truth about what happened to Ashley Pond and Miranda Gaddis.
Well, Mariah, at some point, she got older, got very curious about what actually happened to her sister, and she began corresponding with Ward Weaver in jail and actually went in and met with him on a couple of occasions.
It was about my 4th visit with Ward when he admitted that he had kidnapped Ashley and Miranda and killed them both. He stated that Ashley deserved it and that he wasn't sorry one bit for her. He showed a lot of remorse. He actually cried when he admitted to kidnapping and killing Miranda. He said he was very sorry, but he thought Miranda had seen him moving Ashley's body from his house outside. He knew that the police were closing in on him and that they knew what was going on, that he had Ashley and Miranda, so he hurried and put Miranda's body in the shed instead of burying it. He burnt their clothes and shoes and backpacks to hide the evidence. And he just laughed.
Ward Weaver's house has been torn down. Today, it's an empty lot. Ashley and Miranda's mothers, Laurie and Michelle, moved away from Oregon City. They live with the knowledge that their daughters were taken by a man they once trusted.
You know, everybody deals with these types of tragedies in different ways, but you know, you first start out hopeful. She's late. Then you start hoping she's run away. And then you realize that's probably not the case. It just doesn't add up. And then I guess there's a process of accepting that perhaps the worst could have happened. But it's you know, how do you ever deal with the loss of a child?